I pushed a button. And then Bob Bass.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today for the second Cannabis Public Safety Forum. My name is Christina Corsi, and I'm the Cannabis and Liquor Program Manager with the City of Portland. Our first ever Cannabis Public Safety Forum was held in May of this year. The intention of organizing the first forum was to not only strengthen the relationship between Portland's cannabis businesses and the city, but also to strengthen collaboration between city's agencies so our businesses may best be served. The forum was to educate city leadership to the challenges of the industry and to hold a solution-oriented, open discussion between city leadership and our cannabis businesses, where we can collaboratively work together to solve safety concerns that impact the cannabis industry. We had top city officials from Portland Police Bureau, Community Safety Division, Portland Solutions, and Prosper Portland join us so we can lean into and highlight existing city resources despite the city's budget shortfall to assist struggling businesses. In the May forum, much of the conversation was centered around the increase of criminal activity targeting Portland cannabis businesses, which account for 69.7% of all statewide cannabis crimes. Business owners expressed frustrations for the lack of arrests made, and there was a strong interest in a follow-up meeting to do a little deeper dive with justice system partners to help better understand how criminal investigations and prosecutions work, what goes into pretrial detention determinations, and how they can engage to educate policymakers about their situation. While progress has been made in the past several months with some arrests being made, criminal activity continues to plague the cannabis industry. In June, the Portland Police Bureau and the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office held a press conference stating a clear message of their intent to not tolerate this behavior in the community and their plans to crack down on these crimes. Aside from just crime, Portland's cannabis industry is struggling. In recent years, we are seeing a record number of license surrenders as a high rate of businesses are selling or moving out of Portland. I often hear cries from disgruntled and exhausted business owners that they have spent every penny of their life savings, years of blood, sweat, and tears poured into their business trying to stay afloat or survive. Complaints of annual fee increases, not able to receive tax breaks like other businesses, for an industry pumping millions of dollars yearly into the recreational cannabis tax fund with little to no return on those funds, and also a lack of transparency as to exactly where those funds are going and how they are spent. We shared resources at our last forum for those experiencing issues with homelessness on or around their property, vandalism, graffiti, and tips on how to stay safe and vigilant. What other issues are you experiencing? This is an opportunity to educate our top city and county officials on the hurdles and struggles cannabis businesses face. Cannabis program staff can speak till we're blue in the face, but real change comes from the collection of voices that are experiencing firsthand. Today, we welcome your testimonies, questions, and concerns. In times of frustration, I understand that emotions may run high. I ask that we all be respectful and open-minded in our conversation today. Please be courteous to others that may have questions or want to share testimony. Please do not talk over others and allow space for all to engage. Prior to testifying, please share your name and business for the record. I would like to welcome our panelists who can introduce themselves and discuss a little bit about themselves and or their role. We also have several representatives from partnering agencies in the room who are here to listen and learn. Those are Portland Solutions, Multnomah County Chair Commissioner Vika Peterson's office, Prosper Portland, and Portland Permitting and Development. Later, we will be joined online by Acting Detective Michael Stevens of East Precinct. I would like to welcome our panelist.
I guess I'll start. My name's Mariel Moda. Can everybody hear me okay? I'm Mariel. I work at the DA's office. I'm a chief deputy, which means I'm responsible for a third of the office divisions. I handle the strategic prosecution and services unit. I oversee the child support enforcement division, as well as all of our prison diversion programs and our minor felonies, including property crimes and drug crimes in the office.
My name is Jason Wolf. I am a lieutenant with Portland Police Bureau. I oversee the homicide major crimes unit. You heard better. I oversee the homicide major crimes unit within the detective division, and Sergeant Jacobson works within that unit. He'll introduce himself. And I've been with the police bureau for 27 years, and I'm happy to be here.
I am Matt Jacobson. I supervise the Major Crimes Unit in the Detective Division. The Major Crimes Unit oversees and investigates armed robberies, aggravated assaults, and all of our bias and hate crimes, which is a pretty diverse set of fields. Prior to being in this role, I worked in our neighborhood response team and worked closely with Portland Solutions all around a lot of our livability issues. So I have some of that background as well. If I'm on my phone, I'm trying to manage a surveillance mission we got going right now, actually for an armed robber related to a dispensary robbery, a couple of them. So I'm not being disrespectful. I'm just trying to play a little double duty because my co-sergeant's out of town. So.
Good afternoon. My name is Chris Burley, and I'm the captain for North Precinct. North Precinct covers the largest geographic area in the city. We have patrol responsibility from the Linton neighborhood in St. John's in the far west, out to Gresham on the far east side, up to the Columbia River to the north, and then down to the Willamette River and I-84. Right now we have 99 officers assigned to North Precinct. That has to stretch over 3 shifts, 7 days. And so there's times, and I shared this with some of the folks that were here last time, that we may have only 12 officers that are responding to calls for service in the precinct at one time. And we're working, our recruitment division is working to get more officers out there in the field so that they can respond to calls for service. And so that hopefully as we begin to continue to bolster our staffing, we're not having to do double duty as much. But I appreciate y'all, the information that you shared with me last time. And I look forward to hearing from you today. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephanie Howard. I'm the Director of Community Safety for the City of Portland. I work very closely with a number of the public safety partners we have here today and across the region. And I work very closely with city leadership to address problems exactly like this and others throughout the city. So I appreciate you all being here. I'm eager to help and work with you.
Mike Kramer, Patrol Lieutenant with the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office.
Would any of our community partners from the audience like to introduce themselves? Say hello.
Hi, Skybreaker Knapp. I run Portland Solutions. So we do city sheltering, outreach, camp removals, and livability issues. So if you have any specific issues with security, cameras, camps in your area, trash, graffiti, that kind of thing, I can help solve that. So just come see me and happy to give you my number.
Garrett Pryor, he, him pronouns for Chair Vega Peterson, her Senior Policy Advisor on Infrastructure and Development. And similar to some of our colleagues here, just working on small business outreach and connection at the county level and permitting enforcement, that type of thing as you go through there.
And David Kuhnhausen, I am the Interim Director of Portland Permitting, excuse me, Portland Permitting and Development. Christine and her team's in our bureau.
I am Spencer Knowles, Chief of Staff for City Councilor Steve Novick, who's also the co-chair of the Community and Public Safety Committee. Happy to be here.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Adam Murray. I am a Policy Advisor for Councilor Loretta Smith, District 1, Chair of the Labor and Workforce Committee, and this is my colleague.
Linda Valentine, I'm the Business Liaison and Constituent Representative for Councilor Loretta Smith.
I'm Rachel Jones. I own Club Sky High. I also own Sky High Farms here in Portland. I've been in business for 13 years.
Sally Bishop, Green Goddess Remedies. We've been there for 13 years and I have a micro chair that's been there since the beginning of medical.
You just there anybody that would like to come up and testify and share their story or their struggles? Yeah.
My name is Mark Mowbray. I own Clean Karma Gardens. First of all, I'd like to apologize for the way I'm dressed. I'm leaving here for the water and my grandbaby when we're done. I'd like to thank the enforcements of what we've had in the past. I have no issues with, thank God, break-ins and trouble. My issue is theft from within our own industry. And I don't know who to talk to. I had a 20-minute private conversation with Steve Marks before he took a hiatus. And since then, it's died. In the state of Oregon, in Portland, and our farm is out near the airport. We have licenses. The Department of Revenue, in order for you to sell your license, you have to pay the Department of Revenue, make sure your taxes are cleared before somebody can absorb your business. And as a farmer, we work hard. In today's economy, I cannot buy you dinner, I might buy you lunch, I might even get you a free taco, but we're not doing really rocking good. And when a licensee absorbs a tremendous amount of debt with us and then sells off to somebody else, they don't assume that debt. Since my talk with Stephen Marks, we have lost approximately $51,000. Now, a lot of people can say, well, that's really stupid of you. Maybe it was, but when you're negotiating and try to make ends meet, and you have a business that without that relationship, you can't get your product out there, and you really think you've been with them for 14 years, 13 years, that you've been doing well, and they sell and go, call me stupid, but yeah, they were doing good for the first 9, and all of a sudden they owe me money and they're gone. And I don't know who to talk to. I've reached out to everybody. If anybody has direction, I'm easy to find. Christina knows how to find me. I don't do anything wrong, so I'm not hard. You don't see me, but that's all I got. I just think that, and with the metric system, you can't tell me that he said, she said, that if you say that, well, they owe me $18,000 before they leave. And oh no, I paid him. We have a metric system that tells you everything we do. If I sell you X amount of product, it's in that system. And all you have to do is check and balance. You receive it, make sure I receive it. If you pay me, then you should verify that somehow the metric people, the ITs can do this. We just need somebody within the OLCC or however the state of Oregon, the Department of Revenue got their action. We need that action. It's a small bite, but I don't think I'm the only one that's out money. And I've got a great attorney and we've sued companies, but again, we're an illegal activity business. We're not federally recognized. We can't sue nothing. We have no hold up in court. So thank you for your time and wish us all luck.
Sorry, I didn't catch it. What was your business name?
Clean with a K. Clean Karma Gardens.
Thank you.
So technically speaking, I think what it would fall under would be a form of conversion, which is a civil issue. So theft, the criminal version of theft, requires a certain level of taking without consent. So when you enter into a business agreement and those are unpaid, it's not squarely within the theft criminal statutes, which is why civil remedies are where we point people to. And to be honest, like, I understand what the issue is with the civil side. I'm not a civil lawyer, I'm a criminal lawyer, and I'm not offering anybody legal advice, just to be very clear. But that's why if you were to call 911 and say, you know, I made an agreement with somebody to give them this product and they agreed in writing, here's the signature, here's all of it. That's why the police wouldn't be responsible for that investigation. Yeah.
Yes, even if we had, and we've done the paper route, it doesn't, we can't even get.
Yeah. And this is, I mean, this is why people hate lawyers, because we split stupid hairs, right? But that's really the difference between conversion on the civil side and theft on the criminal side.
Where can you see the value of that? Department of Revenue getting their.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And this is, in my view, this is a state legislative issue. This is a lobbying issue and OLCC regulation who, you know, I wish we had an OLCC representative at forums like these because a lot of the questions and concerns that we see from your organizations often fall into this like pseudo civil nebulous space where more regulation and oversight and support for businesses is really what's going to be the fix, not calling law enforcement or seeking criminal prosecution. We agree.
And while we may not like lawyers, that's why we love Mariel. She'll give you like, give it to you straight, so.
Wasn't fast enough.
I am confident the people back there could not hear what you said because I could barely hear you up here.
One more.
Sorry.
Thank you. For anybody who's interested in this issue, this is a policy agenda item with the Cannabis Industry Alliance of Oregon. Come find me afterwards and I will connect you to Chow and Jesse, the executive director.
Question for you guys, are there any updates on the investigations surrounding all of the cannabis burglaries that we were talking about at this last meeting?
Yeah, and I can handle that. So that investigation, I know Acting Detective Stevens was gonna be here. We have an investigative analyst that sits within my unit that was assisting him with that. An event occurred, I think about 45 days ago. That rose to the level where it would be assigned as a robbery within my unit. So I have a detective assigned to that who is actively partnering with Acting Detective Stevens. Kind of as a side note, when we see our serial robbery crews, and you think 2, 3, 4 people going in, generally it's not the same 2, 3, 4 people every time. It's usually just, and this is just from experience, you know, maybe 2 core folks that are doing these over and over again, and maybe you get one person join them one time, one person the next. So that web gets pretty wide when you start trying to identify people and connect people. And so we're working with them on that side of it, on really when we talk about that investigative kind of metrics, that investigative deep dive into make sure we're connecting people. As good as we are, there are some people that we're not going to identify. The thing I will say about that is that is just inherently labor intensive. We have some great computer programs. We have some great tools to help us get through a massive amount of digital information. But at the end of the day, all that has to be gone through by a human who ultimately would need to testify in court. So we are limited a little bit in terms of how long things take, just because we can't have a computer testify. We need to have somebody kind of have that work product. There was, and I think Captain Burley could speak to it. There was a burglary, I believe, at a warehouse up on Riverside on August 11th, and I don't have all the details on that. But there have been a handful of others that we believe are somehow connected to that crew, including events outside of the Portland metro area. And again, with the contacts we have through those analysts that work with other agencies, we were able to pull a lot of that information together. On the kind of macro scale, when we talk about criminal investigations, there's always a big difference. And Marilee and I have a long history of working together, both like when we were doing actual investigations and prosecution. We both are like bosses now and don't get to do the fun stuff as much as we used to. But there's always that difference of what we know and what we can prove. And oftentimes we get to a criminal investigation, we get to a point where we know this person is responsible for whatever crime that may be. And then we get to that, okay, we need to prove it. Oftentimes, when we look at our disciplines that we cover in terms of robbery and assault and our hate crimes, specifically on robbery, we're leaning very hard into work around cell phone data, writing warrants and issuing subpoenas and proving people were certain locations or proving they weren't certain locations. And that is all at the behest of third parties. We issue a subpoena if we write a search warrant, even to a financial company for financial records. It says there, hey, you need to return this information within 30 days. Oftentimes we get it in 90 or 120 and we're glad we got it. There is a function, legally to hold those people accountable, but at the end of the day, they are private companies. And so you start talking in 60, 90, 120 day increments, where we need one piece of information and then get the next. You're talking all of a sudden you get to 6-9 months really, really quickly. And so our caseloads are very high. But also those ongoing cases may have a piece done 1 week and we're waiting on something for 3 or 4 or 5 weeks down the road. So the length at which, specifically the one you asked about, that burglary case, as long as that's taken isn't surprising to me at all, especially when we start talking about the number of places involved, the number of incidents, and how we have to work to tie all those together. If it was as simple as we just found a fingerprint of one person at each one, it could be done a lot faster, but we have to kind of do the second level investigation. I don't want to, there was one, I think we had a good response on the 11th and we're able to take some people into custody.
Yeah, the location on Northeast Riverside Parkway. The location had been burglarized on the August 6th. Officers learned from that burglary what the MO of the group was. So they're able to set up, I guess, that there's a Department of Environmental Quality location there or nearby, and the suspects had hidden their vehicles kind of in a off the road place. So officers responded to this incident late in the night, early in the morning. Got there, saw that there was 3 vehicles parked in the DEQ parking lot that appeared not to belong there, set up a perimeter. One of the persons ran into the Columbia Slough and had to be coaxed out. He was out there treading water for a while and then eventually realized that we were very comfortable waiting for him and he was not so comfortable. And so 2 people were taken into custody, and what the officers observed was that this crew had gone in and had not only burglarized and taken materials and looked for money, but they were extremely destructive with stuff that the officers' perceptions was that it didn't need to be damaged. I think that is part of the process of the investigation, trying to learn why that was that they were doing that. And so just kind of share that with, we recognize, and it was brought up last time, that, folks are, using these big trucks to overcome safety features you're putting in front of your buildings. And then when you have this, it just is a kind of a dagger to the heart to, like, I'm trying to run a business. You come in and you burglarize, and then you take it to the next level by just damaging stuff you don't need to damage. But that case, we had a precinct acting detective that came in. She came in at about 2:30 in the morning. I came in at 7 o'clock in the morning, saw her. I was surprised to see her. She explained why she was there and what she was doing. She was working on warrants and getting them over to the district attorney's office. Come 6 o'clock at night, when I was getting ready to leave, she was just getting ready to leave because there was the 3 vehicles, one of them which ended up being stolen, but we still need to write a warrant to get into there to figure out the one of the 3 vehicles that was at the DQ. They found out was stolen, but we still need to write a warrant for that. Processing all the evidence and everything. Just that initial part, took her that length of time, and then other officers to help search the vehicles, and then the follow-up with being able to write warrants on any cell phones or other information. And as Sergeant Jacobson stated, then learning more information about them, believe that this group is tied to other burglaries in the area. And then also learning through the interviews that one of the people that we took into custody, it sounds like, was just kind of like you were saying, there's the folks that are the organizing and going out and doing this. And then this guy was just like, I just kind of met these people and they had this opportunity for me, and I decided to participate in it. So.
And on that, just for discussion's sake, maybe we had only captured that person that wasn't really part of it. Right. And so now we have a little bit of information. but now you're doing the work to try to dig up who are the people planning it. So the way we work criminal investigations, it's a constantly moving target, and that target moves. We get new information. It is we have to be agile, to say the least, to make sure that we're keeping up with the changes in those cases.
What can we do as the cannabis business community to, like, I guess, help with this or put pressure on making sure that these get solved? I mean, right now, it's been, there's less pressure on the industry right now, but, you know, a few months ago when these were happening like every night. And so and we all have so many problems that we're trying to solve on a daily basis as business owners and everything else we're trying to navigate. So like there's a smaller turnout today than there was the first one of these meetings. It kind of feels a little, less angry than it was in the first one of these meetings. But obviously the threat is always going to be there. It's like these people have been, some of them have maybe been arrested. I'm sure some of them have been released. I'm sure that this is, kind of churning through the gears of justice, but what can we do to, like help out or just like keep pressure up on making sure that we do see prosecutions for this, we do see people that are being put away for this, and that as an industry, we don't have this issue in 6 months' time when all the guys get back together and they come out and rob us all again.
Well, I could say unequivocally that we're in a position in the city of Portland and all of Multnomah County right now where we're aggressively prosecuting people. It is a phenomenally collaborative relationship that my team has with the units that prosecute assaults and robberies and hate crimes. We talk all the time, and we're all working towards the same goal. So we are in a really good place for that. I will say that, the criminal justice system is a big cumbersome machine, and there are a lot of different parts of that have their say in it. I think we'll probably want to talk a little bit about people being released from custody, and Mariel can speak to that because it really is once a case is transferred over to the court side where that happens. In terms of what you can do is make sure we're reporting things. It's hugely important. Make sure we're reporting anything you see suspicious around your businesses. And make sure when you make that call for a suspicious something, ask for an officer to contact you in person. This is going back to my neighborhood response team days when we talked about how to work with our business community. Hold us accountable and say, I'd like to talk to that officer in person. Yeah, you may get a 2-year officer who may not have the depth of knowledge that one of us may have. But if nothing else, that officer working that district is going to have a face with, a name and a face with that business, maybe going to have a little bit of more insight into that business. And in 3 weeks, when that officer's working and some call happens there, they may have a little bit more information. It's building that knowledge within our patrol division. When it comes to me, it's reactive. I have a little anecdote I can talk about some proactive work we did recently to address some robberies. But when we look at criminal investigations, those are reactive events. The thing has happened, it's been reported to our patrol division, and it gets assigned to a detective. So I guess I'm speaking a little bit out of my lane when we talk about what we can do. The final thing is, I would say this to anybody: if you're the victim of a crime, make sure you're calling and asking updates. And that update may be, hey, I'm sorry, I don't have an update. We're still working it. But ensuring that everybody within the criminal justice system knows that you're engaged and active as a victim is hugely important. We have a lot of cases, and in any business, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And I'm not saying be a jerk and yell at my investigators, please, but just make sure that everybody knows that you're engaged and interested. Because on that, one of the things that we have struggled with in the past is when we go work a case, we will have contact information for the person working that night. And we may need video follow up with other records from business owners or managers. I would make sure that whoever is the responsible party for that business, their contact information is shared with the folks working in your retail locations, and that is conveyed to the police as well. It really helps us fast track getting the information we need on the back end of those investigations. I think a lot of people are doing that more and more, but it's always something that comes up that we call that worker 2 or 3 days later, and they're on a day off at the lake, and they're like, I'm not working right now. You need to call this person. So making sure that the responsible party for that business is conveyed to the police on that front end is hugely helpful also.
Yeah, I'll also add, I mean, first I want to acknowledge that I've been doing these cases. I've been prosecuting personally dispensary robberies and burglaries since like 2017 with Matt. Stephanie and I have been to 100,000 meetings together on this. And I always have the same sort of heartbreak that I feel when I hear somebody inevitably from the audience go, what can we do? Because you're doing a lot already. And I know intimately well how much money you're spending on security, how much it costs you to prepare a window, that, you know, there are certain businesses that have had to change their locks and put gates in 6, 7, 8 times. They're still getting broken into. And it just, that question always to me is sort of indicative of the level of frustration of like, how much more can you possibly be doing? And to Matt's point, I think it's fair to say, making sure that we have contact information is one of the most important pieces. From a hiring perspective, one of the things that I always tell people as someone who has to work with witnesses and work with people giving testimony and grand jury and stuff, is it's a really good idea to set expectations with the people that you hire, that your business is one that will participate with law enforcement. Because there are many personalities all over every industry. It's not just the marijuana industry. We deal with it all over the place. Lots of people don't want to sit down for an interview with a cop. They don't really care what happened. That's not their thing. And I think it's incumbent upon employers to make sure that if you are going to be hiring someone and bringing them into your organization, that you level set up front. This will be a part of your job should this happen. This is my expectation of you as an employee. Is that something that you are uncomfortable with or something that you feel like you could deal with? That to me is a step that's often skipped. And the other part is making sure that all of your employees know what your security systems do, how the video is downloaded, how to access it, how to save it to make sure it's not recorded over, because oftentimes it's not going to be the same officer taking the report as the one who shows up to collect the video, as the detective who shows up to ask more in-depth investigatory questions. So making sure that whoever is on site can download video or connect with law enforcement in a way that's informed and useful, that's really helpful. And the last thing I'll add to that is having an internal incident reporting policy. So if something happens, even though you've already spoken to police, it's a good idea to have that employee memorialize what they saw, because as you can imagine, people under stress often give different accounts of what is happening. The best thing that we can do is get a snapshot close in time in writing to what that person's experienced. So if it is a delay, if it's somebody showing up to open the shop in the morning and they're like, hey, this window's busted, the safe is missing, all this stuff, that you're like, okay, stop what you're doing. Don't touch anything. Write down everything that you see when you walked in. That is super helpful to law enforcement to have an accurate factual accounting of the first impressions of what that person has seen. So we're not dealing with it 3 weeks later, asking this person like, what cars were in the parking lot when you got there that morning? And they're like, how in the hell could I possibly remember that? Right. So in terms of making investigations more kind of faithful and more effective early, those are the things that non-law enforcement can do, I think, to really sort of start setting the table for better investigations as we move forward with them.
We have a question right over there.
Thank you.
Before we do that, I'm sorry, can I just add one more thing to this? Mariel, I wonder if you would speak to the importance of when an arrest is made, coming to court dates as the victim.
Oh, absolutely. So there are lots of different dates in the life of a criminal case. There's in a felony case, there's often 2 arraignments. There's a lot of different process to this. Our office has fantastic victim advocates who will help a victim in any case navigate this and be informed of the dates and know when they need to come and when they have the right to speak and what your rights as a victim are. It is very, very helpful from our perspective as prosecutors to have the victims present when we're asking for things like release conditions or asking for bail amounts or explaining to the court why someone should or should not be let out on conditional release or why they need GPS. Because I think it's very easy, and this is like no shade on our judges, I just think it's very easy when you're dealing with these criminal dockets to see these crimes as sort of these nebulous, victimless crimes when it's a business. And when they see the owner or the employee showing up and they're seeing the people that are really dealing with the impacts of these crimes and the trauma that's created in these situations and the financial impacts that the victims are living through, there's nothing more effective than in-person testimony to a court. I can stand up in front of the judge all day and tell him how much was taken and what was broken and what was stolen. It's never going to land in the same way as one of you showing up and saying, this is the direct impact this has had on my business. This is how many times this has happened. This is how many times, you know, I've seen this guy on my block walking up and down the street. Like, your involvement, your engagement in the system is a really important part of the process. And I understand that it's sort of unfair to look at people with full-time jobs, full-time plus, right? And then you have domestic obligations and you have everything else to deal with, to say, stop your day and come into court for 15 minutes to tell a judge that this thing that happened to you was terrible. But it is actually really helpful and has a great impact in the process when our victims are engaged and involved in our cases. Did that
Thanks.
kind of get to your question?
Yes, exactly.
I wanted to ask about interagency coordination. It seems that, you know, given that we live in a state where cannabis is legal, within a nation where cannabis is not legal, it seems that like your hands are tied a little bit, right? When it comes to the resources that are available to you, or otherwise, if you have evidence of an organized crime ring where the suspects aren't even from this region potentially, and like just can you talk a little bit about like what resources are and are not at your disposal, and if there's policy direction that we as people of Portland can take to sort of fill that gap?
Yes, I will say it's not just within Oregon. Some of our better partners on my team are our counterparts in Vancouver, Clark County. You know, our suspects don't know that the Columbia River is a border. I spoke with a Vancouver police officer this morning who located a car that was stolen in a carjacking at gunpoint a couple of nights ago in Portland. They found the car. It eluded them, but they wanted us to know where they think this car was hanging out so we can work through it. You know, there's some functional hurdles that we have to get over when we're talking state to state. I'm not a sworn law enforcement officer in Vancouver. In the past, we had code deputization, so we had the ability to go into Clark County and have police powers. We're working through that. That's more of a Washington state level statute issue and an Oregon state level statute issue. That's actively being worked on just because our metro areas are so close. We need to have that. Now we've overcome that with getting creative. But the other side of that is we work really closely with the I-5 corridor. We work really closely with our major metropolitan areas. I mean, I don't know if Eugene's a major metropolitan area, but we work really closely. That's where we see a lot of our transit happening between, you know, Seattle, Portland, Salem, Eugene, San Francisco, Bay Area. When it's appropriate, and I get that the wrinkle around, you know, marijuana itself makes it difficult. We have a really strong working relationship with our FBI Violent Crimes Task Force. I have a detective that is a task force officer. He's co-sworn as a federal agent, and we actually have a second we're working on. So we're really lucky on the West Coast that we have a lot of those working relationships. And honestly, not even just when we talk about our traditional federal law enforcement. You know, we work with Army CID from Joint Base Fort Lewis McChord. So we have a lot of those contacts that we use. I will say that something that gets a little bit unique and a little bit interesting is when we talk about the metro area, it sometimes seems like people like to commit a lot of crime in Portland where they won't go to Washington County or Clackamas County. I think we're working on that. I think we've identified that. And I mean, I spoke with the Washington County Violent Crimes Sergeant yesterday on something. And so that's active. I will say when we have those events that occur in our metro area, we generally know about them and share that information. We have a great listserv that we blast information out to. We actually solve a lot of cases that way. We just solved a robbery case that occurred out in East Portland at a restaurant based on sending info to our Clackamas County counterparts who had just seen similar work. So, you know, what could be done to make that better? I don't know. I think I'm gonna think about that. I'll put a pin in that. I think just based on general law enforcement resources being less in the last several years, no matter what corner of the metro area you work in, I think it's been felt. And so we've had to become very collaborative with that work. Working in a silo is just not an option at this point for us.
Yeah, and in terms of our immediate local agencies, Multnomah County is like a weird little family. There is very rarely a case that goes without a DA assigned to it, without a detective assigned to it, without interagency coordination between Gresham, MCSO, PPB. Our local law enforcement agencies work very well together, and the DA's office. I can say this DA, Nathan Vasquez, is very, very committed to restoring kind of the DA's office standing as a member of law enforcement. So, our prosecution rates on robberies for the year since he's taken office are at 97%. The year previous, they were at 91. The year previous, they were at 86, 82, 79, 76, going backwards. So it is a strong initiative of this district attorney to make sure that the cases are prosecuted aggressively. And to what Matt was talking about earlier, one of the reasons why it feels sometimes, I'm sure from your perspective, like there's a lack of urgency on our end is because we have to get it right. If we get it wrong, we don't get a second bite at the apple on the criminal side. So we have to take our time and make sure these investigations are put together incredibly meticulously and just buttoned up and airtight because we don't get a second bite at the apple. So what may look externally like a lack of urgency on our side is often just the level of preparation necessary to make sure we obtain a conviction. It's a lot of work and it's a lot of meticulous, annoying. I mean, we could make a part-time job out of like fighting with Snapchat on subpoenas, which is, I won't bore you with why that's actually really interesting, but that's, I just want that to be very clear that the agencies in this county have never looked at this industry as, like, well, they got into an illicit cash business. So like, what did they expect? That's never been the attitude here. These cases have always been, as far as I have seen, by the police, heavily investigated, taken very seriously. And we do see and acknowledge the massive contribution to the economy and to the culture of this city and of this county that we all really love from this industry. So, while the federal government may not reflect the values of this city or of this county, we are very close-knit, working very, very closely together. And even, Stephanie and I, we joked when we got here, like, oh, another meeting today together. Like, we work together very closely on a lot of issues related to public safety, because oftentimes we are on a little Portland island, and that's okay. That's kind of how we like it. So we've been dealing with this and we'll continue to work aggressively on these cases. And I do really want to thank everybody for their contributions and for continually showing up at things like this to share their experience.
And I think if I could just add to that, I think it's important to recognize, specifically, we've got representatives from city council offices here. And I think it's terrific to have those folks here to listen to you, to hear what your represented officials in the city, they want to know what your experience is. And I know that they are very committed to trying to represent you in spaces that, that they're tasked with representing you. I think there's an opportunity here as you engage with your city council, representation. They may not have control over the law that you want to see changed or the issue that you are facing, but they do have the opportunity to lobby on your behalf. And that's what they want to do. So, having our folks from city council here, there are state laws and state regulations that need to be addressed. And I think we've all talked about many of those. They may not be able to control that, but they can hear you. They can use their influence in conversations with state legislators, raising issues that are of priorities to us and to all of you. So I think just continuing to engage, continuing to show up is a huge help. And having our folks from City Hall here is a big step towards that.
I'd like to just real quick follow up on something Mariel said. When somebody is robbed, it's a person crime. The victim of that robbery is a person. Yes, a business is robbed, but we look at that as a violent person crime. So where that happened is really inconsequential to us. And as a manager of people, as you are also, we look at that person standing behind a counter who got robbed as the victim of that crime. And it happens, unfortunately, more than we like. And sometimes we say, oh, it was only a robbery, nobody got hurt. But hey, a gun still got somebody shoved in somebody's face. That's a big deal. And so I want to emphasize that we look at these as a violent person felony. Yes, your businesses were also victimized with the loss of product or loss of money. But there's no discussion around, oh, it's this kind of business, because we're looking at that person victim first. And it doesn't matter who you are in our city. If you're robbed at gunpoint, we're gonna do our best to address it. So there are a couple of questions.
My name is Brian Wallstrom. I'm an owner of the Heights Co. We operate 2 producer licenses within inner southeast Portland here. Earlier in the year, we had one of our facilities successfully broken into, and then about a month later, the other one unsuccessfully. They drove a stolen U-Haul through our neighbor's bay door and then backed it out and tried to drive it over our balusters and high centered it and abandoned it. So damaged our building, but didn't get in. Now, in both of those cases that evening, there were multiple robberies that were very organized, performed by the same group in the same area. The surveillance videos verified that. All of the businesses being hit are unlisted. These are nondescript buildings with no signage whatsoever. It was only distributors and high-end producers. So I guess I'm wondering, on a night like that, say where we know 3 different places got hit by the same crew, are those being investigated as one single investigation, or are those 3 investigations? And then when you're, say, giving your successful number of prosecutions, if the same group gets prosecuted for one of those 3 robberies for the night, is that a 33% success rate? Or is that considered 100%? I'm being honest.
No,
Like, how are the statistics lumped when it's beneficial?
That's a
And-
very good question. So the rate I was referring to was issuance rate. So that means when the police refer a case to the DA's office, we've issued 97% of those cases out of robberies for this year, since January of this year. So to answer the question about how that would be treated statistically, it depends on how the cases would come in. If it was one case and it was one crew and there was 3 co-defendants and each location was 1 count on the indictment, that would be 1 prosecution. If they were 3 separate cases, it would be 3 separate prosecutions.
So in situations like that, is it one detective that is assigned to all 3 of those cases, and they're actually kind of working that with overall mindset, or 3 different groups working in conjunction?
Yeah, so I'll start with this. We use oftentimes in the United States the term robbery a little bit interchangeably. So a robbery within Oregon is the use of force or a weapon to take or retain property. Yeah, and then a burglary would be breaking inside with the intent to commit a crime like theft. So investigatively, it behooves us to assign the same investigator when we have multiple incidents that are connected, not just in one night. Some of the more important work that I do reviewing cases is keeping notes and keeping an idea when we have serial robbery events, and making sure that we get those cases assigned to the same detective so that we have an overall investigative purview. Again, it helps when we ultimately refer something for prosecution, that there's one point of contact, but also those cases are all supportive and complementary of each other. As I mentioned, you get one piece of information, then helps the next. And so that's how we operate. That's fairly best practice. And frankly, it's the most efficient thing for us to do. So I have one person that can go to do the follow-up in Southeast and spend, an hour going through those 3 blocks rather than 3 different people.
And not to speak for the police on this one, but the way that we've seen it play out a lot has been in a situation like you're describing, where in one night, 3 places are hit. The way that BPB is able to connect that it's the same thing as a person like you reporting, hey, these other 2 businesses got hit the same night. And that'll trigger the patrol officer to look at the other cases and connect them and bring them to a sergeant or a detective.
Right.
Yeah, so they're not gonna pull the officer talking to you off of your case to go. Yeah, exactly.
And we have a couple of different.
Cops are gonna be tied up at this place, so let's go a half mile away, hit these guys next, because nobody's gonna show up.
We look at a lot of those like spree events, where we'll see 2, 3 4 in a night.
Being in the industry, knowing kind of the buildings. Very important.
Right.
That's another thing I would say is they have to be getting with that.
What kind of,
That is gaming. Any producer.
that's what I was just gonna ask you, is what kind of access do people have to that system?
Anybody with natural cause.
Can I ask how many arrests have been made this year regarding this burglary operation?
So, yes, you can, and I can speak to the robbery side, just because that's my purview and that's the stats I had. And I say this with the caveat, the way we keep our stats is through, what is called the NIBR system, which is the National Incident. It's a federal coding, dictated to us by the FBI. Oh, the National Incident-Based Reporting System. I use that all the time. I should have totally had that. And so it tracks things like location type, some things around the amount of value of things taken or lost, et cetera. So our reporting is dictated by that. There is not a dispensary specific based coding that we have. We identified this about a year ago and have been working through with our strategic services division. In fact, last week, it kind of came a little bit through where we are able to have subcategories that are Portland specific that we can track. And there is one now for dispensary or marijuana businesses that will help us identify and pull better records. So a lot of my numbers here are just purely based on my anecdotal notes and what we've kept. Year to date, we've assigned 12 marijuana dispensary robberies. So when we talk about, somebody using a weapon to take force. For reference, we've assigned 140 total robbery cases this year, which is actually down from about 223 at the same time last year. We're seeing less robberies pretty consistently. Our open data on our Portland Police Bureau page, which is open to all of you. For April, May, and June, we had 90, 77, and 91 robberies in 2024. For this year, we had 82, 80, and 64 in June. We're also seeing a decrease with our taverns and our lotto delis. People like to rob places that are cash-based. It just is. And so with the way the Oregon lottery works, if we're going to get into it, people have to have a substantial amount of cash on hand to support the Oregon lottery to be able to pay out. And so our other places that are hit highly regularly are taverns and lotto delis. Those are down as well. So in terms of the arrests, it's a conversation we have all the time around clearance rates, is we are hovering this year at about a 42% clearance rate for robberies. National average is about 30, 35-ish. But a case I assigned in May, I wouldn't expect to be completed until September or October, just based on how long it takes us to gather that information. So in terms of arrests this year, those are based on like 2024 cases, early 2025. We did just finalize an indictment on a case from the end of 2024. There were 7 takeover style robberies that occurred. We ended up getting DNA off a glove on one of them. And based on that, we're able to start working those cases and got secured indictments on 3 different people for those cases. And that occurred a couple of weeks ago from cases going in 2024. So 2 of those people, I think one's in custody, a couple more outstanding. So we have warrants for them and we're out going and trying to find them to arrest them on those indictment warrants. So that work is happening. Again, it's hard to say, hey, we've made this many arrests from this many cases this year. It's this weird truncated, it feels like a bungee cord to me where we get this huge lag time and then we catch up.
What's the time on you submitting something to the state lab for DNA and getting results?
So that's another huge limiting factor, Chris, and thank you. We are at best months away from getting returns on DNA from our state crime lab. It is a huge impact to the work we do. When you have a DNA hit, if that is our only lead, when we submit that and we get a response in 6-8 months, that case is essentially dormant for 6-8 months, saying something else coming up. That is a huge limiting factor with what we do. Obviously, we don't control the state crime lab. It is under the Oregon State Police, and their resources have been cut back. When we talk about burglaries, and I'm talking about robberies, a violent person felony, when we talk about burglaries, we fight really hard to even have that DNA tested at this point. Oftentimes we're doing our work and sometimes we end up issuing cases and going to grand jury and taking some risks on the prosecution side so that we can turn around and tell the crime lab, hey, this is a case that is predicted to go to trial by this date. We need to have this stuff back. And so that is, again, that working relationship with our line DAs that, hey, we need to get this information back. We have to push and kind of circumvent that system. So I guess when you ask about collaboration and how we can get some help is having a robust and responsive crime lab for us would be a complete game changer. And not just for this, we're talking about all types of violent person felonies. And also those property crimes that are so impactful to businesses specifically.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, the answer is yes.
So my business was robbed at gunpoint in October. Part of that, from either of those cases has anything turned up. But I feel like overall in Portland, I moved down here about 10 years ago and I watched Portland be a place that felt very proud to be a part of its growth. This summer to feeling like it's just crumbling. And I've watched countless businesses go out of business, and I feel like that face, it's kind of this idea that property crime doesn't matter. I feel like broken window syndrome or whatever you want to relate it to, but all crime kind of starts there, because now that criminal has money to go buy their drugs. Now that drug addict is the drug dealer, now we have finding crime with the gangs that all these drugs. And it's just like, it feels like overall property crime, as a business owner, it's part of what you're paying your taxes into. It's in one of the highest tax states in the entire country. You just feel defenseless. You're paying all this money for taxes, and yet you don't feel like you're getting anything in return, and then you get robbed and stolen from, and it's up to you to basically defend your position for money and security and all these things to basically make it almost impossible to survive in the industry. I mean, it's like property crime needs to be a major place to focus, because it all starts there. And as a taxpayer, if I can't feel secure that my property is being protected by the state, then eventually I'm gonna get up and leave, just like countless other people have. I mean, in the last 5 years, I think we ranked one of the best places to move to, and now we're in the bottom 5. I mean, it's just so clear, that what is being done right now is not working. All the answers are, well, let's raise this tax so we can. No, let's just be accountable to the tax money that we're paying. We're paying a lot, especially in the cannabis industry. And it's like, I don't know, I ran.
I think, I mean, as far as the police bureau is aware that there are issues with property crime that's going on out there. As Matt said, we're seeing a decrease in crime, but that doesn't matter to folks that are the survivors of crime. I mean, you've experienced it. It's real. It's happened. I don't care how low the numbers are, right? And up to 2019, we did have a burglary team, a set of detectives that would focus just on burglaries. But we have to kind of figure out, and that's, you know, the job of Lieutenant Wolf and his team to figure out, okay, if we go ahead and restand up a burglary team now, where am I taking those detectives? You know, back in 2005, we had 1,035 officers. Today we have 799. So we've
Where that money's going.
Well, and so we're working really hard to go ahead and, you know, hire that staffing so that I think we can eventually get back to the day where we do have a burglary task force, and we're working with our officers to try to give them additional training of and understanding that you're not just a patrol officer, because right now there's no detective to send your report to do that follow-up. So really trying to encourage our officers on the street to say, hey, your investigation of this burglary or this property damage is going to set you up so that when 5 years down the road, as Matt was talking about, a lot of our officers have got 2 years on, 3 years on. When a detective test comes up 5 years, you can come into that interview and say, hey, I've done this is the quality of work I've done. So getting our officers that are driving around patrol cars out there to take up the extra work to do what in the past maybe detectives would do to try and get, and then in turn give the district attorney's office a good product, which we still struggle to do with our patrol officers, as we have a very young group of officers and want to grow their talents, but it's not lost on us. And I'm sorry.
Gathered.
Yep.
Like, how do you build a case for that? Where's the DNA? Where's
Well, I'll share your frustration. Imagine being the guy reviewing that report and seeing that none of that was done, and you're like, how am I gonna make it? I guess the one thing I'll add is, and this goes back, when Mariel was one of our neighborhood DAs and I ran our neighborhood response team, we'd go meet with community members, and I learned my lesson. I would pull all the stats for all the violent, crazy stuff that had happened in a neighborhood, and expecting that's what we were gonna talk about. And we would get, and it was never any of that. It was, hey, this stop sign around the corner is really dangerous and it impacts all of us every day. It's, hey, we have this one person that is chronically shoplifting from this one plaid pantry, and he's then going and impacting this other business. So I guess to agree with your point about you talking about the things that really impact your ability to run a business, yes, it's these big major crimes that my team investigates. But the day-to-day livability stuff is a death by 1,000 cuts. And while it doesn't seem like the big one, that's really gonna like crush something, it is the little things that really impact your daily life. Honestly, it's one of the things I miss about that old role, is getting to actually solve some of those small problems. And I'll also mention on Chris's talk about developing our officers. I have an officer up shadowing on my team right now for 2 weeks. He's gonna go back and put his uniform on when he's done with that and go back to the pool of officers who's going out and responding to these calls. We're trying to take steps to teach some of our younger officers to build that knowledge base so that hopefully those 2 weeks with us and seeing how we work these cases, when they go to that robbery call, they ask those questions. They take those steps. So it's part of that professional development we have also.
And I will say that the Police Bureau used to receive $2 million of cannabis tax revenue. And in 2020, with the state of civil unrest, the police were defunded and they no longer receive any cannabis tax revenue. Yeah, so it goes to Prosper Portland. So there's some that goes to Prosper Portland. There's some that goes to Public Works. There's some that goes to the Housing Bureau. There's some that goes to Vision Zero.
can I chime in?
Yeah.
So, my name's Brett Bourne. I'm a cannabis business owner in Portland. And a few things, I guess I touch on all the things. I've come to all these meetings. I sit on CPOD. I believe I'm the longest standing member on CPOD. And if people don't, just so you know, I'm the one that sued the state over Measure 119 and the unionization. And so I'm actively involved in the city. I've met with our councilor member, Loretta. I appreciate you being here. I'm still waiting on some data from her office to touch on what you asked. I have a few questions. I guess one, how does cannabis robberies and burglaries compare to other robberies and burglaries in other sectors of our city and our county? Just in general, cannabis, I'm surprised to hear that the database that you guys used just now disaggregates by type of business, because for years I've been saying that I'm wondering how systemic the areas where these crimes are happening, does it reflect the other systemic problems we're seeing in those areas? So I guess the first question is, how do they compare cannabis robberies, the number of cannabis robberies, whether it be grows or retailers, compared to other robberies we're investigating in the city?
I would, and this is entirely anecdotal just from doing this job, I think our lotto delis and taverns and cannabis businesses, anywhere there's a cash business probably has an equal exposure to it. It depends a little bit on, frankly, who's active at the moment. And we had several serial crews over the last 2 years. We really haven't seen major serial robbery crews this year in a way we'd seen in 23 and 24. In 2024, we count a serial robbery of three or four or more events tied to the same group. We had near a dozen crews operating last year. And some of those were up to, 8, 9, 10, 12 events. We were asked about the collaboration. A lot of those spill into Gresham, Clackamas, and those other areas where we'll end up working those cases collectively. That's where we see crews like to get with an MO, for lack of a better term. They'll hit a lotto deli at 10 p.m. during closing time, and they do that over and over again. We haven't this year seen that serial group hit dispensaries. We did have a very prolific serial robber, which I can get into the work we did on that, to include engaging the FBI, both in Washington, DC at Maine DOJ, and some of our regional partners, who hit over about a 2-year period. And that case is still technically active. But I think a good way to look at it is just those cash businesses can have that exposure to be in specifically for robberies. And this is going back. I haven't worked burglary stuff in a long time.
So it's kind of a bureaucratic nightmare to track data this specifically within our systems, because if we don't have a box to check at the case issuance that says dispensary, bar, laundromat, which we don't have, because imagine the list that we would have.
It's literally like specialty store or retail store. So
yeah. So, and we have certain flags in our system on the prosecution side that are like organized retail theft. So where we have evidence that there's a fence where, we're now prosecuting somebody who's receiving stolen goods, we have a way to indicate that. We are working constantly in both of our systems. Actually, Matt and I today, we're talking about how to data share in a more specific and effective way to capture information like this in a way that helps us track our impact. Because obviously if we can't track it, we don't know if we're being effective. But to my earlier point about nobody in this system caring whether it's a dispensary or a Chinese food restaurant or a laundromat or whatever, we've always just looked at robberies as robberies. That's how we track them, right? Because the crime type is where the disaggregation of data occurs. So our office this year is working on disaggregating data by hand checking cases. There's 1,700 of them to go through. And what we have to do is use the incident address and look up not what is there, but what was there at the time of the crime. So there's a little bit of, it sounds kind of easy, but it's something that takes like 25 to 45 minutes a case. It can be more, it can be less. It takes a long time to kind of disaggregate and figure out what kind of impact this is having. But I can say anecdotally, what we saw is exactly what Sergeant Jacobson is talking about, is that basically cash businesses are always victimized at a higher rate, whether that's internal theft or like wage theft also, or burglaries or robberies. Cash businesses are always kind of the primary target. And then there's like the retail aspects. We've tracked spree burglaries, we've tracked different kind of crime types, but it's sort of impossible for us with any accuracy to tell you dispensaries make up 42% of the victim of, of burglaries in Multnomah County. Product, yeah. Non-residential burglary type would be my guess. Mhm. Yeah, because we don't track what's stolen either. We don't have, right, we can't say like jewelry from a residence or, money from a safe or guns.
We do track what's stolen, but it's
Not in the same way.
not in the same way. I will say on the burglary side, and this just goes back to working those cases for several years. It's anything that's easily sold for cash, essentially is what we generally saw people burglarize for. When it's not easily sold for cash, we ended up recovering a ton of random stuff in storage units when we finally solved cases and served warrants on storage units. But anything that's easily transferable into that cash is what is going to be taken.
When can you?
saying like, I got pray to God just to hope it's DNA and I guess that should stay loud. So what would be a reasonable expectation? What would be success?
I'm not really sure I understand the question.
Should I just do nothing ever gonna happen?
I wouldn't say that. And without, like, obviously, without having the case file in front of me, I honestly could not tell you. But I would never tell somebody to just give up hope and stop contacting law enforcement to ask for updates on the status of the investigation. For burglaries? Yeah, we have new open burglaries
And the case
for
that I
dispensary.
just shared earlier on the 11th, and that was they got the folks or a portion of the group that was there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sir, if afterwards, if you want to come up and give me the address, I can look into where it's at and depending on what, we'll reach out to the precinct as well.
That's pretty damn. People ask, what do I have to do? Well, people gave up. Where do you want to here? Still good thing. I don't know. I'm being an asshole.
Well, you're not being an asshole. You're frustrated and we hear you and we want to do better.
I'm not good. I wish you had.
And it is,
I wanted to say on that note, I think I asked for but the reason people are giving up is because there's not transparency, right? On your end, there is the best you can do, but there's not transparency around the allocation of tax dollars. And so that's the reason you give up, right? Because we should have steering power in some ways, and we see that we're not over they should. And I was here last time, and I recommend that everybody that works for the city of Portland, whether you're a police officer, economic development, public safety, we've gotten away from what Measure 91 says where that money should go. And I sat through a CPOT meeting, it was the first time, and I thank you for that, the first time that any of the bureau sitting up here today realized that this is a cash cow. Period. That's why I asked the question about how many get robbed. We know it's a lot of these stores, right? Because also, the booze isn't worth as much on the street, and either is a lottery ticket as a pound of weed. So that being said, there's a ton of dollars to come from this industry 6 to 8 million from the 20%, 3% the city gets, but that's not including the hundreds of millions of dollars that come from Measure 110 addiction services. Now, I'm wondering if your question would be interagency within the city and the county. Because if we could start to identify where these things take place, we can start dumping tax dollars based on Measure 91 of where it should go. And I believe that your bureaus are lacking tax dollars that should be coming your way. And I think when we look at this, is the money, because the sections of town where economic development is being done, so because we're losing not just cannabis businesses in the city, we're losing small businesses. We're losing it in areas that have high rates of crime, high rates of prostitution, drug dealing, robberies, all the things that keep everybody here employed. And so I think where we need your support, and I'll say it again, I'm still waiting on data. There should be transparency around where this tax money goes that we pump into this industry. And there should be data around billions of dollars to be injected into the community in general. Because the number's not available to taxpayers, business owners about what does this industry really bring? And how many people sitting here are really maybe funded by it and who's not? And I just think that as business owners, I'm begging at this point, the people that have the ability to make change for us as representation, I appreciate everyone being here a lot, but we need you to represent us in the fact that there's money on the table for your bureaus. There's no doubt about it. And if I'm wrong, prove us wrong that there's not, but that money is not being allocated to the letter of the law in Measure 91. So I don't know how we get to it, but when you talk about where the money goes, you look at the original thing, some of it's supposed to go to Peabody. Right? That's, you know what, I'll go down that road. Over in our gate neighborhood where our infrastructure for sewer can't handle all the giant buildings that city council rubber stamped to have built and increase the impervious area. It's now flooding our sewers over there where we don't have runoff, and then our parking lot floods in the winter, and every business in there, I'll tell you what, I'm the only white guy in the parking. Right? Everyone else is a small minority business owner. So that's who you're choking out. You're wondering why we need economic development in parts of the city? Because businesses are closing. This is not that hard to figure out. And so here we are, though, rubber stamping that, but we don't have infrastructure to support the city, which should be the tax dollars that go to the public safety and economic development to help these neighborhoods and these small businesses. So when interagencies aren't working, you guys work well together, trying to solve crimes. But we need to know what public safety is doing with the money to help put it in the direction where it needs to go. We need to know that the money's being used by Prosper to actually prosper the city. And there's no accountability or transparency, and I think it's ridiculous that the city talks out one end about social equity, but you're never gonna have it without transparency around the tax money that's supposed to help these areas that were impacted the most and have the demographic of people that were impacted the most by the legalization of cannabis. And I think the only thing, honestly, that's gonna fix this is that somebody needs to figure it out before the city has a lawsuit of where the hell the money's going. It should be transparent. There should be an online repository pretty much, because that's how much money this industry brings into the city. We all sit here and know it, and it's the first time now law enforcement, the DAs are recognizing it because there is a lot of money involved. Right? And why is it Peabody putting the money into the infrastructure that's flooding parking lots? And things like that. So that's what I think our city leaders that are here can do, is present that data, and then I think that money, we rank choice vote where Portlanders would like to see that, where that money go. That should go right in your direction, law enforcement and people that are prosecuting crimes in the city.
Well, and I think I work for an independent elected official, so I think I can say a little bit more than anybody else on this panel, but I hear you and I agree with most of that. There is a big conversation around public safety, and oftentimes public safety gets kind of narrowed into our focus, which is criminal justice. We do one specific portion of public safety, but that's not all safety is. Safety isn't just finding people committing crimes and making sure they can't commit crimes in the future. That's a big part. But public safety is safe roads, it's good schools, it's, good traffic patterns, it's exactly what you're talking about, like a vibrant, economically healthy city. And I think a lot of the people that should be sitting at this panel today are not also sitting at this panel today. This is a very criminal justice focused panel where we have representation from the agencies that handle that very small piece of the pie. So as much as we would like to weigh in and, sit around and opine about all the things that we think could be improved. Like what we are responsible for is what we're here to talk to you folks about. And I fully appreciate your frustrations. And then I think in the last meeting you and I attended, I said, once I realized what the tax revenue looked like, I was very confused about what was going on. So I hear you. I just want to make it very clear. We are one slice of that pie and are happy to talk about that. That's in our wheelhouse. And I see.
Yeah, but if you
Loretta's
guys
just-
find money to find investigator positions, it's the major crimes unit within the detective
Call-
division.
Yeah.
Can
Just
I,
call it
can I
directly.
just also say, I mean, because like on that topic, I mean, it's, last year in Oregon, it was $960 million in the cannabis industry. And I think Christina, you said at the start of this, Portland's like 69% of the industry. So that's a lot of money that is in this industry, that is in this city. And you guys are right that you're 1%. So this is kind of actually maybe more towards, city councilors and other departments that are here for this. I think that as an industry, we would appreciate just, more people paying attention to us. Like we've been doing what we do for a long time, and we generate a lot of taxes, a lot of economic value for the city. It's a big thing that we do. And I think that, even ourselves, we tend to forget that we don't realize just how big of an industry this has become and how important of an industry this has become. And then, of course, we have all these crime issues as well.
If I could just chime in really quick, I just want to thank these business leaders for speaking up, and especially Brett for reaching out to our office, educating us on these issues, and all of you for being here today. First, I want to start with resources. So the adopted budget for fiscal year 25-26 is published on the city's website. All you have to do is Google adopted budget, City of Portland, fiscal year 25-26. And on page 140, it'll give you a schedule for each of the service areas. It starts out and it shows you where all of the program expenses come from and the various funds throughout the city. And I mean, there's hundreds of funds, right? And during the budget process, I mean, one of the things that really got our office interested is exactly the question that you're talking about here, where we hear from cannabis business leaders, there's so few resources that you have at your disposal. Banking is a barrier. The ability to do interstate commerce is a barrier. There's also barriers for bankruptcy protection when business isn't going well. And we just see the price of the product plummeting. During that same budget process, getting to look at all of the various places where this money is doing work was really eye-opening to me personally and to Councilor Smith. Specifically, I think that it's actually really important leverage and adhering to, just where this money is supposed to go, to making sure that the various places such as public works and public safety, that cannabis business continue to support that. But you're absolutely correct that there needs to be more done with those funds to do business development and really to support the law enforcement agencies supporting public safety around the cannabis infrastructure. And doing research around this issue, I saw a memo from 2022 that said that the industry was starting to take a downward turn, that revenues were coming in slower than expected, and that if nothing was done, they would continue to dwindle. And so what we have here is a big problem, right? If nothing is done, if we don't support this industry now, then to your point, the dollars that are being used to pave roads, to fix water systems, to support law enforcement officers' ability to secure technology that'll help solve crimes, like all of those things are threatened by the health of this industry right now. And I think, the reason why we're here today is to learn from all of you exactly how those funds need to come back and benefit this industry to make sure that your businesses can thrive. So I'm not coming here with answers. I'm coming here to listen. But I do think it's important that each of you have that resource around the budget. And then I invite you to also talk with our offices around, if you see certain areas where that money is working, you have different ideas about it, and you have colleagues and community members who also have different ideas about it, we'd sure love to know. That budget process is something that happens every year. And so this is really important. And I just wanted to make sure that you know exactly where to go to find that information. So again, in the adopted budget, there's two ways to look at it. there's a dashboard that for me is really difficult to follow because it works like a series of pie charts that shows you all the different service areas and how money is coming in and coming out of those service areas. The better document for me is the PDF of the adopted budget, where you just go line by line and you can literally take a highlighter and look up cannabis, cannabis revenue fund. There's also a cannabis licensure fund. So you can see those various ways. And then, I encourage you to just reach out to our offices and let us know like your thoughts about how that money is being used. And then we'll use that when we consider what we can do in working with other council offices to see how we can improve the health of this industry, because it is doing a lot of very important work. That's not to be dismissed at all. So it's not listed in that way. There are budget notes and there's also things like decision packages. There's an entire narrative section that the budget office, that the city administrator and the mayor's administration use to kind of contextualize how they've made decisions in the budget. And I mean, it takes a very narrative approach until you get to that page 140 where it's just figures, right? Figures and funds. And a lot to your point as well, there are immense regulatory barriers to just spending that money any kind of way. So I would say in their defense, like, I work for Councilor Smith and we're not part of the administration, but we can recognize that one, I think that the alignment project that they're doing with enterprise efficiencies from the city administrator's office, consolidating those service areas, getting them to work together better. We're already starting to see good results from that, like the one water project that just came through in Public Works, where you start to have more leadership and see people from PBOT, Bureau of Environmental Services and the Water Bureau all working together along the same goals and sort of prioritization. So, when it comes to the regulatory nature of those funds, I would say that, they need to be able to defend every dollar that they spend when there's regulation attached to those funds, right? And so the way that they're spending the money is not necessarily against the letter of the law, but it may combat with the spirit of that regulation if it's not doing enough to support the source of the fund, which is the cannabis industry itself. And I think that's the place where we need to work together to figure out what is the right approach, what's the right way to slice the pie, because overall, as the city overall sees a budget deficit and a lot of economic headwinds, I see this industry as one of our best routes out of that predicament. Like, I think that Oregon has some of the best cannabis products in the entire nation, probably the world. And I think that, when people come and travel to Oregon, you see cannabis, food, beverage, all working together to just show people some amazing experiences. And that's actually the heart of the recovery economy following COVID. So I think, as we sit together and think about these solutions, like, I just want to make sure that I'm providing all the information that I'm seeing, also just being open and not acting like, we have all these answers baked already. They're certainly not, right? That's really good to hear. I had a sense that something that was a barrier and not something that I would like to see as a private citizen, not on behalf of the council, but I think that would be really positive.
Really, I actually think that's really important. And since we have the opportunity to have your attention, I want to reiterate that if we want to get consumption off of the sidewalk and off of our public parks, we need a designated safe place for that to happen.
Like trying to promote food companies like getting quick. Come on, check out our food. We have really great food. Here's
What was the rationale to take $2 million from the police department and give it to these various groups? Because those aren't the people that I call when I'm being actively robbed by gunpoint, which happened in November, or I have a lunatic in my parking lot for 3 hours wondering where the building came from and accusing me that I know Linda and threatening my customers. I'd rather, I mean, what was the rationale to take that money? Because less people who are able to come and help us out, I don't see that as a benefit. I see that as a detriment. So what are these groups doing? Can I call them and are they going to come help me out?
I, if you're talking about the most recent budget action to do what some counselors called an increase to the police budget, because there was a proposed budget and then there was an adopted budget. And so even prior to the proposed budget from the mayor's office, there was a city administrator's proposed budget. And each of the bureaus have to give their own request, like for their budgets, right? And so the police bureau had requested an amount. The mayor's administration felt like they should have a couple million more than what that amount they requested was. And certain counselors felt that given the proposal to cut parks and recreation, they wanted to see that money instead go to parks. And their argument for that was that parks are a form of public safety. And so I don't want to editorialize or impugn any counselors. That's not a position that our counselors supported, but I think that, you know, that was their argument at the time. And they certainly heard about it from a lot of folks. Yeah, that is really important. Spencer's right. It went back to police.
Yeah. And just to clarify though, did it go, I don't think it went directly to police, it went to.
I think it went to the service area.
Inside screaming and crying. And in the parking lot, and the police don't come, like, what's a person supposed to do? It's like, I'm in there with me and two other small teeny women. You know, I'm not gonna go out there and, you know.
We're still working on improving our call response time. And we're definitely not meeting the threshold that, where we want to be. And that starts also at the Bureau of Emergency Communication, where you're calling to get police services, and then getting an available officer to be there as well. There are some other options depending upon a person's behavior and where they're located. In the city of Portland, if you call non-emergency or 311, they may direct Portland Street Response to come out, depending on the behavior that the person, as long as the person's not being violent and they're not in a roadway, then Portland Street Response should come out, and they're very well equipped to be able to, a lot of times they'll have a clinician, a person with lived experience, and sometimes, another clinician.
EMT.
Or, yeah, an EMT.
Yeah, I wanted to say, call 911. Please
we
call
did.
911 every time
Yeah,
you
no, we
feel
did
unsafe.
twice and it went
Yeah.
on for like 3 hours.
And I'm so sorry for
And
that.
so I just wondering to what degree, because we had this conversation after we were robbed. We have this trimming shears, you know, they're super sharp. We were like, we should have stabbed the guy in the back when he turned around and was doing something. I mean, is that the type of thing? I mean, are we allowed to defend ourselves if somebody is on our property and actively robbing us? To what extent? Wouldn't want to go to jail.
So I will jump in front of this one and say, no one on this panel can answer that question for you. So no one on this panel can answer that question for you. And one of the things, go ahead, please.
Okay, hold on. We have a question right here, and then we have a question online.
Thanks, Christina. Hi, I'm Tara Evie, she, her pronouns. I'm with Nimble and I also sit on the Cannabis Policy Oversight Team. And I want to start by saying thank you to all of you guys for being here today and participating in this forum and for everybody who put it together. It's good news to hear that it sounds like overall maybe some of the robberies have actually started decreasing. It seems like there's a perception, at least this year though, that there's been a shift to more of the non-consumer facing facilities. And so I'm just curious, as the investigations have developed and whatnot, if you guys are seeing any trends of, like someone mentioned before, like using metric, or if these are, any way connected to employees, or if there's folks that are, in ancillary businesses or contractors, or if really it is just organized crime rings that are utilizing the Secretary of State data to try to find where these facilities are. And the root of that question is being informed as, folks who are managing these businesses of things that we can be doing to protect ourselves from that standpoint.
So I know our acting detective, Mike Stevens, is on here. One of the things we try not to do is speak to other people's cases. I don't know the dynamics of what they're comfortable releasing and talking about publicly to protect that info. Mike, are you on here?
Yep, I'm on here.
Did you hear the question?
I did hear the question. So no, nothing as of right now, nothing in terms of the investigations that we have been conducting has pointed to any employees yet. And I want to caution the industry because rumors are flying all over the place right now regarding, oh, well, this employee didn't show up a day after the burglary, or this person has been acting kind of weird. And so for right now, in terms of the investigation, no, nothing has pointed to any sort of employee. Metric, as we all know, there's flaws to it, right? All it takes is one person to get their hands on a list. And it seems like there can be a lot of access to it. So I can't tell you if that's how people are getting information. But as we all know, on your pre-rolls, right, the address of where those come from are printed on the label when you buy them. So that in itself could also be a way that these guys are targeting these distribution centers. So I want to reiterate though, right now, nothing in our investigation has led us to believe that it's like an inside job per se.
Thank you.
Tony, do you have a question?
Yeah. Hey, my name's Tony Birch. I own a handful of retail stores around the Portland area. And I've got a question, and I want to actually quote a Portland Business Journal article line real quick, and I'll get to the question. Portland has long faced criticism for being unfriendly to business with some of the nation's highest business taxes. A report released last year by the Tax Foundation found that Portland has the highest business taxes and the second highest top marginal rate on wage income in the country. So I'd be curious the panel's thoughts, and I know you guys are a sliver of this, and I'm incredibly pro-police. This is not like a teeing you up on for anything, but I'm just very curious your guys' thoughts on that, and even the thoughts of the representatives of the commissioners in the audience. But with such a high taxation rate, not just with to Portlanders, but also to the Portland businesses, why does that rate of taxation not align with the livability in the city? Why is Portland, with quoted multiple articles, one of the highest tax rates in the nation? Why is Portland, from your guys' opinion, not one of the safest, one of the cleanest, one of the most thriving, one of the cities with the lowest vacancy rates, one of the most vibrant cities in the country with a tax rate so high? Where's the misalignment? I'd be curious thoughts on that. Thank you.
All right, nobody.
No, I'll dive in.
Not everybody talk at once.
No, I mean, it's a huge question. It's an important question. It's a question that's been asked over and over by many, many people over the last several years. I think it is the dynamics in Portland are incredibly complicated, especially over the last 4 years, right? Especially through a pandemic, through an uprising around racial justice and some impacts from negative sides of some of that. the last 4 years have been incredibly challenging, not just in Portland, but in other places. And to your point, you're right. The return on investment doesn't feel proportionate. I think we all hear you on that. And I think we all are trying to find ways to address it. And I'm really, again, I'm just going to say, I'm really glad that we've got policymaker staff here to be part of this conversation because, we can put forward, I mean, I guess there are lots of different approaches to address this complicated problem. We have a problem with homelessness in Multnomah County. We have a problem with addiction. We have, we went through the experiment that was Measure 110. And, as you said, there's funding that came from this industry to support what that should have been. And it continues to support, efforts that are meant to address addiction. And I think that a lot of those things coincided all at once in a way that created this situation we are trying to unravel today. So I don't claim to have the answer to why any of this is the way it is right now. But I think what I can absolutely say is that I live in Portland. I love this city. I think we're all here in that spirit of trying to find solutions together, figuring it out, making improvements wherever we can, and making sure that people who make those policy decisions hear from you, they hear what we hear in meetings like this, and that they feel what you feel as best, we can accommodate to that. And that's not a satisfying answer. There's not a direct line here, but, I think this is all the last 4 years, 5 years have created a lot of tentacles on a lot of different problems that, socially we've had that have been kind of unprecedented. So I think we all want to find our way out of it, and we all want to find our way back to the Portland that, did feel like that livable, safe, good return on investment place to live.
I don't know what the Multnomah County motto is. I think it's one county. I'm not really sure what it is, but I can tell you from the county perspective, the DA's office is one of, I think, 5 different statutorily mandated offices that the county commission has to fund. So we have this enormous budget. We have these core services that statutes and the Constitution of Oregon mandate the counties to fund. We are one of those things. The sheriff's office is another one of those statutorily mandated things. So that's a public safety function. That's a criminal justice function. And what we advocated for this budget cycle from the DA's office was a return to funding our core services, our core functions. Because in some ways, a lot of this spending can feel like we're out shopping for a Lamborghini while our garage is on fire. We should be looking at the inside of the house. We should be looking at the structures and the systems that we have in place. Are those things working? Are those things serving our citizens? How are they serving our citizens? Are they accountable to our people? Are they accountable to the income, to the impacts that we want them to have? And moving in that direction as a community. And what we see often is that there's a lot of money being spent outside of our core services while the core services are struggling. So for example, and I'll just bemoan this because I can, the DA's office was not funded at their full budgetary ask the last budget cycle. And a lot of that money was reallocated to the backfilling of supportive housing services shortfall, which was, it's not my business to explain how that happened. You can read all about it in the newspaper, but that is not necessarily a core function of the county. So we have these allocation questions that really come down to where the voters put their priorities and how much people are willing to advocate at the budgetary level and showing up at public hearings and talking about what their priorities are and how organized different sectors of the city are. For example, the restaurateurs did a phenomenal job advocating for their businesses in 2020, which is why we saw those sidewalks opened for businesses to stay open during the pandemic because we couldn't be in closed spaces. So where there's organization and where there's advocacy, there are results. And none of us could sit here and answer from our professional positions why we are in the place that we are in. But what we can all do is advocate for everyone feeling like they are a part of the system, like they own a piece of the system, and like their voice is an important part of this. So to your earlier point about, should I just throw my hands up and give up? Absolutely not. I think that's the wrong thing to do. I think that feeds into the kind of atrophy that we're trying to find our way out of right now. That doesn't answer where the money's going. It doesn't answer where the money's coming from. It doesn't answer how the money should get spent. But I hope that that at least communicates that we should all use our voices to advocate for the things that we want in this community. I'm sorry, Tony, I don't think that answered any of your question at all.
No, that was quite nice. Thank you.
We're coming up on 3 o'clock. Does anyone have any last questions, comments?
Ditto. I mean, thank you.
We continue to try to get OLCC to the table, get our policymakers to the table. So, I mean, it's not for a lack of trying. Any feedback that you can provide of, I know metric is a huge thing, cannabis policy. I wish I knew.
Hey, we talked a little bit about businesses and training and getting people to call and participate. If any of your employees or you have any interest in having a conversation about how we can help train them or talk to them about dealing with crime, I'll be around. I'll have my business cards, but we said that, and then I feel like it's a little bit on us to own that we're willing to help with that. So.
I was just gonna say, people should let their opinions of what's going on in Salem at the end of the month. They're trying to do a major tax hike, and that's going to affect everyone with more taxes and worse payroll situations. So. Yeah,
And Christina, I just want to, Stephanie just said, I just want to appreciate you all coming today. And I know that, you tried to characterize yourself as being something other than you are. But we want you to know that we hear you. We want to rise to the occasion and help you. We value your presence here in Portland. I'm hoping that we can meet again soon, and I'm hoping that when the officer comes out again, that you're getting better service. And I think by the opportunities that and the growth we're trying to have within the organization, that will happen. So just, again, thank you very much on behalf of the Portland Police Bureau for being here today.
And the DA's office also.
Thank you to all of you and all of our panelists. Thank you so much for coming.